Hi there, Chris from Stone Age Gamer here, and welcome back to the gratuitous Rainbow Spectrum, and welcome back to the Nintendo Report, where we're taking a look at Nintendo's intellectual properties in alphabetical order to see how they're doing. This time we're focusing on the letter C. That's C for Chibi-Robo and Custom Robo and other games that start with C and end in Robo, but probably not. But anyway, we're going to see how all those games are doing. So how are Nintendo's C-tier titles handling themselves these days? Let's take a look.
Alright, first we have Chibi-Robo. Oh, my beloved Chibi-Robo. This poor franchise is so adorable and fun, but it's just a bit too weird to make it mainstream. This is effectively a series of games about a tiny robot who wants to help people. It's incredibly weird, but it's also very endearing. The series' supporting cast is super quirky, but the titular Chibi-Robo himself is a fantastic design, so much so that he even got himself his very own amiibo. Still, I'd say its health rating is not so good. Chibi-Robo has never been a sales juggernaut. It's presumably managed to maintain a degree of profitability since they kept making them. However, the last game in the series, Chibi-Robo Ziplash, had a bit of a cloud over it. The creator said something to the effect of that if this game wasn't a success, it would mean the end of the Chibi-Robo franchise, and wouldn't you know, the game kinda flopped. It's a real shame too, because it was pretty fun, except for some utterly baffling design choices. Having the next stage picked randomly, meaning players would sometimes be forced to play the same stages over and over for no reason was, well, it was certainly a choice. Regardless, the character has a cult following, so I wouldn't rule anything out forever. Heck, there's even a sort of spiritual successor out there now. Maybe someday they'll remake the original, again if you count the new Play Control release on Wii, and give the whole series a fresh start. That would be nice. Next up, we have Clubhouse Games. It's almost hard to believe this game works as well as it does, but a collection of public domain / legally distinct board games is actually quite the recipe for success. The original Clubhouse Games on DS was one of those under-the-radar must-have games. Not everyone knew it, but those that owned it rarely let it out of their sights. As for its health rating, I'm gonna go with pretty good. Clubhouse Games got a fairly solid sequel on Switch a few years back. It's missing a lot of games and features the DS game had that seemed like no-brainers, and it really looked like it was set up to receive some DLC at some point, but it's been pretty stagnant since its release. Regardless, it's still a really fun game in its own right, and it stands to reason it wasn't all that expensive to make. There's always a chance it'll go away, as I'm pretty sure the Switch game didn't perform nearly as well as its predecessor, but considering how little effort the concept ultimately requires by comparison to other projects, I suspect we haven't seen the last of it. Now let's talk Codenames Steam. In Japan, this game is called Codenames Steam Lincoln vs. Aliens. So if that doesn't tell you exactly how bonkers this game is, I don't know what will. This came to us from Intelligence Systems, probably best known these days for Fire Emblem and Advance Wars. This was yet another strategy game, but with a much more action-oriented approach. The goal was to try and make something a bit more approachable for casual players, and wrap it up in a cool Civil War's steampunk aesthetic, Abraham Lincoln and all. This one's health rating is very dead. Unfortunately, this game just did not work. It managed a small cult following, if even that, but nothing about its premise or visual style connected with audiences. Outside of an obligatory spirit battle in Smash Bros. Ultimate, Codenames Steam hasn't shown any signs of life, and if I were a betting man, I would expect it to stay that way. Next up, Cruisin. Originally an arcade-style racing team-up between Nintendo and Midway, Cruisin has been on quite a wild ride, pun very much intended. Its focus was always on fun, and the original 3 arcade releases reflected that. They were pretty darn popular too, with the original Cruisin' USA serving as a sort of preview for Nintendo's then upcoming Ultra 64 console. When it finally did make it to the Nintendo 64, the game performed just as well there, solidifying itself as a reliable brand for Nintendo in both the home and arcade markets. As for its health rating today, I'm going to call this one great. Things went very poorly for Cruisin' after its third entry, Exotica. Midway went through their own set of troubles, and the Cruisin' brand was only attached to 2 mediocre games for almost 20 years. In 2017, though, the game's original creator once again teamed up with Nintendo to create Cruisin' Blast, and released it into arcades where it managed to successfully recapture the magic of the originals. It even got ported to Switch with a ton of new content added. Cruisin' seems to be cruising for continued success. On the complete opposite side of the spectrum, or, well, every spectrum, we have Cubivore. This game is bonkers, and I'm not 100% sure it's a Nintendo-owned license, but I believe they at the very least have a stake in it, so here we go. It's once again an Intelligence Systems joint, and it's somehow even more off the wall than steampunk Abraham Lincoln. In it, you control a cube who has to try to evolve by killing and eating other cubes. This process eventually triggers mutations that help your character move about and become a more efficient predator. It's a fascinatingly bizarre concept. Sadly, I have to give this one a health rating of very dead. Fascinating isn't enough to equal sales. Nintendo didn't even want to localize it in North America. The only reason it made its way here at all was because Atlas decided to take up the task. It's one of the more rare GameCube games out there thanks to incredibly low sales, and fetches frankly absurd prices in the aftermarket. Personally, I've always been a fan of this one, and I wish I owned it myself, but not as much as I wish it could get a second chance. It's ugly as all heck, but there's a certain charm here that could be done so much better with today's technology. That is an extremely unlikely scenario, though. Finally, there's Custom Robo. While its name may be similar to Chibi-Robo, the two games could not be more different. Custom Robo is an arena-style fighter where players choose different robot parts to make a custom robo and then fight it out. Like Chibi-Robo, Custom Robo got its start on the GameCube, at least here in North America, and while it was never quite the runaway success of Nintendo's bigger franchises, it has earned a notable degree of fandom. Its health rating, though, is not so great. Custom Robo seemed to be doing pretty well for itself for a while there, especially in Japan. Overseas, the series started on the Nintendo 64 and saw a number of releases that were never localized in the West. However, the last title in the series is the same in all territories, 2006's Custom Robo Arena for Nintendo DS. Not a peep has been heard from this series since then, with the exception of the obvious spirit battles and costumes in Smash Bros. Series developer Noise seems to have settled into mobile game development these days, but they are still around at least, so maybe we'll see a grand return to Custom Robo one of these days? Who's to say?
Well, that about wraps it up for the letter C. Not the finest showing in the world, but there are a couple of franchises that are doing okay. A couple that I'd like to see doing better, but that is the way of things. Nintendo can't keep everything alive at all times, though I do wish they would keep more alive than they do. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Join us next time when we'll hit up the letter D, which has Donkey Kong and some other games I can't really think of right now, but Donkey Kong's involved, and that's an important one. But anyway, thanks again for watching. If you like what you saw here today, please follow, comment, like, subscribe, share. Let us know down in the comments which C-tier Nintendo games would you like to see them revive and make new iterations of, or heck, remake. I would love to see a remake of Chibi-Robo here. I love Chibi-Robo. I think he's great. Anyway, thanks again for watching. On behalf of all of us here at Stone Age Gamer, keep playing games. Thank you.